Look at the handout I gave you.
Pogledajte u bilješke koje sam vam dao.
And start on the side that says Paul's mind passages. Yeah, there's one right there. And the thing I want you to notice as you look at the Romans passages, Romans 1 and Romans 8 and Philippians 2.
Dakle, ovo su sve tekstovi gdje Pavao govori o našem umu.
Is what he says about what people are thinking about or how people are thinking.
Sve gdje on govori o čemu ljudi razmišljaju i kako razmišljaju.
And then how it affects their life.
I kako to utječe na njihove živote.
And so with the Romans 1 passage that we've already looked at several weeks ago,
na primjer Rimljanima 1, što smo već prošli,
you have the idea that people's thinking gets affected by their rebellion against God.
Vidi se da su se ljudi pobunili protiv Boga i da je to utjecalo na njihovo razmišljanje.
And it's like they rebel against God, and so their minds get twisted, so they become more rebellious, so their minds get more twisted, and it just keeps getting worse and worse.
Postali su izopačenog uma, a to ide u sve goru i goru situaciju.
The second passage which we're looking at tonight, we'll kind of skip over that.
I večeras imamo ovdje Rimljanima 8, 5 do 9.
The Philippians 2 passage at the bottom of the page.
To ćemo preskočiti. Na dnu stranice imate Filipljane 2. poglavlje.
Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility value other people more than yourself.
Kaže, ne starajte se samo svaki za svoje, nego i za ono što se tiče drugih. Smatrajte druge višima od sebe.
In your relationships with one another, have the same thinking, the same mind as Jesus Christ.
Neka u vama, u vašim odnosima, bude isto mišljenje kao i Kristu Isusu.
Who, even though he was equal to God, didn't hold on to that, but he sacrificed.
Koji, iako je bio jednak Bogu, nije se držao toga, nego se žrtvovao.
Look on the next page.
Pogledajte sljedeću stranicu, drugu stranicu.
Philippians 4:8.
Filipjanima 4:8.
Whatever is true, whatever is worthy of respect, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if something is excellent or praiseworthy, think about that.
Što god je istinito, časno, pravedno, čisto, ljubazno, hvale vrijedno, krepost, pohvala, o tome razmišljajte.
What's he telling them to do? He's telling them to set their minds on something, but it's not the things of the flesh, it's the things of the Spirit.
Dakle, on im govori da trebaju fokusirati svoje misli na nešto i upravo to su stvari duha, a ne stvari tijela.
Does that make sense?
Ima li vam to smisla?
Romans 12:1 and 2, particularly verse 2.
Rimljanima 12:2.
Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice that's passive. It's God who does the renewing. You don't renew it yourself.
Znači, ne suobličavajte se ovom svijetu, nego preobličavajte se obnovom svoga uma.
What will happen to your life? What will happen to you as God renews your mind?
Što se događa kada Bog preobličava naš um?
If I'm reading that verse right, he says your life will be transformed. You will be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Kaže da će nas to transformirati.
God's going to make you different. How is he going to make you different? By changing the way you think and the way you see the world.
Dakle, Bog nas mijenja tako što kao prvo mijenja način našeg razmišljanja i pogleda na svijet.
Look at the very bottom of the page, Colossians 3.
Na dnu stranice, Kološanima 3.
If you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above. Set your mind on the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things that are above, not on things of the earth, for you died and your life is hidden with Christ in God.
Ako ste uskrsli s Kristom, tražite što je gore. Težite prema za onim što je gore, ne za zemaljskim, jer ste umrli i vaš život je skriven s Kristom u Bogu.
Paul has at least 4 or 5 major places where he says, set your minds on something. Let your mind be affected by God. Let your mind be changed by God, because it's going to bring transformation in the way that you live.
Dakle, postoji nekoliko tih glavnih tekstova gdje Pavao kaže Pazite o čemu razmišljajte, pustite da Bog transformira vaše misli, jer to će transformirati vaš život.
Questions about that? Any comments about that?
Ima li pitanja u vezi toga, ima li komentara?
How do you set your mind on the things of the Spirit?
Kako fokusirati svoj svoje misli na stvari duha? It says that we must submit our minds to Christ.
Okay.
Po tome, ako sve sagledamo, u svijetu nema crno, sivo, bijelo. Ili smo pripadnici Boga, ili smo pripadnici svijeta. Ono između ne valja. Po meni.
So I think there is no gray area. Either we belong to God or we do not.
Okay.
Any mixture is not good.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it is not good for the people who are listening to those who are in the middle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have to belong to God or to the world.
Yeah. If I made dinner for you, I'm going to cook dinner for you, right?
Ako sam vam pripremio večeru,
How much rat poison do you want me to put in your dinner?
koliko želite da stavim otrova za štakore?
Just a little, or a little bit more, maybe a cup.
Samo malo ili možda jednu mjericu?
You don't want any rat poison, do you?
Ne želiš ni malo otrova.
This is the mixing that Ada is talking about. That's a really good comment. That's a really good comment.
Znači,
Mixture is not good. Yeah.
to je dobar komentar, ne smije biti miješanje.
Because we think, well, I've gone to church and I've prayed my prayers, I've done my duties, so now I can think about
And then go
Yeah.
home happy
Other
and everything is okay.
Neki razmišljaju, evo, obavio sam svoju crkvenu dužnost u nedjelju i sad mogu raditi i razmišljati o drugim stvarima.
This is where pornography is really insidious. You know that word, insidious? This is where pornography is really dangerous and deadly.
Tu je, na primjer, pornografija vrlo opasna i smrtonosna.
This is where some of the stories that we watch on television or in movies can be really dangerous for us.
I neke stvari koje gledamo na televiziji ili u filmovima mogu biti opasne za nas.
Because what they do is pornography or rebellious stories or stories that are from a viewpoint that is opposite of God.
Jer priče koje govore o pobuni čovjeka koji su protiv Boga,
What they do is they normalize things in our brains.
oni žele pokazati da je to normalno.
They make it so that something that once was offensive to you isn't offensive to you anymore.
Na primjer, nešto što vas je nekada zgražalo, više vas neće zgražati.
Remember when Paul in chapter 1 talked about God handing them over, God turning them over, God giving them over?
Sjećate se prvog poglavlja gdje piše da ih je Bog predao pokvarenom načinu.
God removes the fences or pulls the fences back.
Da Bog pušta da se pomaknu granice.
We have these natural barriers in our mind,
Mi imamo granice u svom umu,
so that the first time you think about a certain topic, it's shocking to you.
i možda prvi puta kada vidiš nešto, to te šokira.
But when you keep coming back to it and you've thought about it 100 times, it's no longer shocking.
Ali kada se vratiš u mislima na to 100 puta, više te ne šokira.
And pornography is a really easy thing to pick on here, but it's not the only example.
I pornografija je jedan takav primjer, ali nije jedini primjer.
Because what it does is it normalizes something. It takes the shock away from something that used to be shocking.
Zato jer ti normalizira takvo ponašanje i više se ne zgražaš nad tim.
What are some good examples of setting your mind on things of the Spirit?
Koji bi bili dobri primjeri kako fokusirati svoj na stvari duha?
One way to do it is to pray that God will let you see people the way that God sees them.
Na primjer, moliti Boga da vidimo ljude kako ih on vidi.
You can't look at people as objects to be used if you're trying to look at them the way that God looks at them.
A ako ćemo gledati na ljude na Božji način, onda ih nećemo gledati kao objekte koje možemo iskoristiti.
Or if you pray that God will help you look at your time the way that He looks at your time.
Ili ako molite Boga da vam pokaže kako koristiti svoje vrijeme.
Or if you pray that God will help you forgive people that you're angry at.
Ili molite Boga da vam pomogne oprostiti ljudima na koje se ljutite.
Or maybe you know someone who is a more mature Christian than you are, and you want to be more like that person. And so you pray that God will develop the same kind of discipleship in you, the same kind of strength and character in you that that person has.
Ili možda znate nekoga tko je zreliji kršćanin i želite imati učeništvo s tom osobom.
I especially see this work with marriages.
Ja to vidim pogotovo u brakovima.
The churches that we were at, several of the churches that we were at in America had ministries for marriages.
Nekoliko crkava u kojima smo bili u Americi imali su posebne službe za brakove.
Where couples who had been married for 20, 30, 40, 50 years
I su išli parovi koji su bili u braku već 20, 30, 40 godina.
would adopt young married couples.
I oni bi počeli raditi sa mladim bračnim parovima.
And just help them get through the first couple of years of being married.
Da im pomognu kroz prve godine braka.
Help them understand this is, you're going to fight, so here's how to fight without destroying everything.
Da im pomognu recimo u rješavanju sukoba, da su sukobi normalni i kako ih rješavati.
I don't know, do married couples fight in Croatia?
Da li se svađate u Hrvatskoj?
Is that just in America?
Koji ste u braku?
Only in
Samo
America.
u Americi. Čisti.
Only in
We're
America.
pure.
We're pure, yeah. I hear my neighbors sometimes. I don't think my neighbors are all that pure. Yeah.
Ponekad čujem svoje susjede.
But these are examples of things to set your mind on instead of setting your mind on.
Ali to su primjeri kako možemo fokusirati svoj um.
Even setting your mind on things that are okay or aren't sinful but aren't necessarily as productive.
Ponekad ima i dobrih stvari, ali nisu toliko učinkovite.
You can set your mind on the things that God wants to produce in your life.
Ali možemo fokusirati svoj um na ono što Bog želi proizvesti u našem životu.
And maybe this passage, Philippians 4:8,
Filipljanima 4:8.
maybe you can pray that and pray that God will show you every day, God, help me to set my mind on something like this and show me things like this.
Možda to možemo koristiti kao molitvu, da svaki dan fokusiramo svoj um na takve stvari, da molimo Boga da nam pomogne.
So that I don't just notice them, but so that I attempt to make my mind more like that.
I tako da bi moj um se bavio takvim stvarima.
All right. Comments or questions? Yes. Yeah.
Somebody was talking recently about how sometimes capitalism wants to make you an object.
Mm-hmm.
They constantly talk about how they can get more work out of a person.
Yeah.
As if that's the...
Yeah.
Sjetio sam se da slušao sam jednu emisiju o kapitalizmu, pa kaže kad se ljudi tretiraju kao objekti, stalno govore kako da budemo produktivni, kako što više izvući rada iz nas, kao da je to najveća poanta u životu.
Yeah.
As if that's the biggest priority.
As if that's the priority, yeah. Efficiency. In America, we say that capitalism is the worst system of all of them except for all the others.
U Americi kažemo kapitalizam je najgori sustav, ali drugi su još gori.
It's the worst system except all the other ones are even worse. Our hearts are selfish. Our hearts want stuff. Our hearts want power. Our hearts want comfort and leisure. And
grešna ljudska narav je sebična i želi stvari, želi ugodu, želi zabavu.
And that's the default setting that our minds go back to if we're not careful.
I ako ne pazimo na svoje umove, oni se vraćaju na tu staru narav.
We don't wake up in the morning and naturally feel like sacrificing ourselves for somebody else. That's not natural.
Možda nam nije prirodno probuditi se ujutro i htjeti položiti svoj život za druge.
It's human nature to wake up in the morning and try to think about how somebody else is going to sacrifice for you.
Ljudi se probude ujutro i možda razmišljaju kako će se drugi žrtvovati za nas.
And so we always have to submit that to God. We always have to give that to God.
I uvijek trebamo to davati Bogu.
That chapter 12, verse 2, don't conform to the pattern of the world. That's how the world thinks. Don't think the way the world thinks.
Rimljanima 12:2, znači ne razmišljajte poput ovoga svijeta.
Don't evaluate people and give them worth based on how the world evaluates people and gives them worth.
Nemojte gledati na ljude kako svijet gleda, kako ih svijet procjenjuje.
Don't make moral decisions the way the world makes moral decisions.
Nemojte donositi odluke kako ih svijet donosi.
Yeah. Don't conform to the pattern of the world, but let God transform your life by transforming the way that you think.
Znači, kaže, nemojte se prilagođavati obrascima ovog svijeta, nego pustite da Bog promijeni vaš način razmišljanja.
Drago.
Jedno pitanje, ne znam da će moći objasniti, ili da hoće.
I have a question.
Parola zdrav,
Zdrav duh u zdravom tijelu, zdrav tako nešto.
zdrav duh u zdravom tijelu. Gdje je tu granica?
There's this saying in Croatia, healthy spirit in a healthy body. It's where they want you to exercise.
Yeah.
Where's the limit to that? Yes.
Yeah, you need to be in balance.
Da, tu se traži ravnoteža.
I was thinking about the question that you asked last week about how Paul seems to be so searching his heart for things that he feels guilty about.
Prošli tjedan ja sam komentirao o tome zašto kopat po svom srcu i traži krivnju i grijehe.
And we talked last week about how some people just get really absorbed in this and their faith becomes very dark and very negative.
I ljudi koji funkcioniraju na takav način mogu upasti u taj problem da postanu vrlo negativni u svojoj vjeri.
And Goran, you asked a question that I don't think I really answered.
Ja sam postavio pitanje Goran je postavio pitanje na koje ja nisam dao odgovor.
But I think that the answer is balance.
Ali mislim da bi pravi odgovor bio da treba ravnoteža, prava ravnoteža.
Solomon says there's a time for everything.
Salomon kaže da ima doba za sve.
There's a time for mourning over your own sinfulness.
Postoji vrijeme kada trebamo plakati nad vlastitom grešnosti.
And Jesus, that's what he's talking about in the Beatitudes when he said, blessed are those who mourn.
I Isus kaže u početku propovjedi na gori, blago onima koji tuguju.
But there's also time to celebrate.
Ali također postoji vrijeme za slavlje.
And so just don't let your life be too caught up in one or the other.
I dakle, traži se ravnoteža između jednog i drugog.